What's good? Welcome to Numbers Never Lie, the best 60 minutes of your day alongside the great Jemele Hill. I'm the above average Michael Smith, and as usual, we got an excellent show ahead. Coming up, Kobe Bryant says something only one person would ever say, and that's, of course, Kobe Bryant. Also, is it fair to question the hoodie, or should Patriots fans continue to trust in Bill Belichick?
And later on, we'll tell you which LeBron-led Big Three we love more, the one that flourished in South Beach or the one that is now in the land.
Is that what the kids are calling it?
That's what they're calling it now.
Yeah.
But our number one topic today, of course, is Minnesota's, or formerly of Minnesota, Mr. Kevin Love. How are they dealing with life after Love? The number in the news for the Cavs is 3-1. Now that the Cavs have Kevin Love, they are now 3-1 favorites to win the NBA title, according to the Las Vegas Superbook. But Glen Taylor, the owner of Love's former team, the T-Wolves, he cautioned everyone that Kevin Love, he just may not be that guy. Now, Kevin Love, he was on Mike and Mike this morning. He responded to Glen Taylor's comments, saying that he should just worry about the Minnesota Timberwolves. I can tell the answer by the look on your face, but nevertheless, I'll ask anyway. Is Glen Taylor just scorned over Love, or does he have a valid point?
What do you think? Of course he's
I think he has a valid point,
no,
actually.
He doesn't have a valid point.
He does.
It's funny how he seems to know so much about basketball and what a good team is supposed to look like when Kevin Love wanted to get out of Dodge as quick as possible because he was comically and criminally mismanaged. You don't know what a good team looks like, Glen Taylor, so shut your trap. Okay, all these hot takes. Well, he's going to get it. He got to play. Put some teammates around him. How about Kevin Love will probably look even better, which is saying something, now that he's got actual capable talent alongside him, which Glen Taylor failed to do. Just be thankful that Kevin Love gave you Hall of Fame type production. Numbers seen by only a handful of players throughout NBA history, while you failed to put an adequate supporting cast around him. I'm not saying the guy's Bill Russell.
Are you sure?
I'm not saying he's a rim
top
protector.
5 player?
He's not perfect, but you know what this is? This is like when you break up with somebody, you try to rationalize why they weren't right for you in the first place. Well, you know what? She was fine, and she had it going on, and she was smart, and she had a good family, and she could cook, but she snored. So I guess I'm okay without her. That's like saying Kevin Love snored. Okay, so what? He's not a great defensive player. So what? He's not great. He tries. I think he does try.
Does he? Really?
14 rebounds a game says
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you trying?
12 and a half, whatever
if you rank 63rd among big men in defensive real plus minus, is that a trying thing? I'm just wondering. Just wondering. That's Mr. Top 5, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Third in PER.
What did Glen Taylor?
Second in rebounding, whatever he was.
What did Glen Taylor say that wasn't true? This will be a different role for Kevin Love, right? He is used to being the key piece, the centerpiece, and now he'll be a second or third piece, however you want to divvy that up.
It's a bad thing.
He does have to learn how to play defense because, as I just said, he ranks 63rd among big men in defensive real plus minus. So he needs there are going to be things asked of him defensively that he hasn't quite done before. So there will be an adjustment. So as far as I'm concerned, I heard Glen Taylor said all facts. He'll need to learn to play defense. He'll need to learn how to fit in. He'll need to learn how to be he'll need to learn to do what Chris Bosh basically learned to do. He went from being the guy in Toronto to becoming a very reliable and good third complementary piece.
I think he can do that. He fits well with LeBron.
I didn't say he didn't.
Irving. LeBron lauded his best. No, he didn't. All he did was sound bitter. Okay?
Really?
Because maybe we wouldn't be here if Glen Taylor's silly behind wouldn't have signed him to a shorter contract than Ricky Rubio, allowing him to opt out of his contract. I bet you if Kevin Love would have said, cool, Glenn, let's do it, you'd have never heard these things about Kevin Love from Glen Taylor then, would you?
Probably not.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's why he's a scoring lover.
Even when you break up with somebody, you still can tell the truth. The fact is, did they snore? Well, maybe they did.
I ain't reading that number.
It's a fact.
Oh, you know what? It's like Eddie Murphy with Leela Rashawn and Boomerang. Yeah, but there was hammer time on her feet. It's like, really?
You don't mess with her feet? Is that what you're saying?
Come on, man. You just lost
that doesn't mean that Hammer Time doesn't exist.
You're mad. You just lost a top. You're mad. Okay, Kevin Love was right. Worry about your own team and how not to ruin Andrew Wiggins' career.
I would agree with that. Timberwolves owner Glen Taylor criticizes Kevin Love's defense. Scorned over Love or a valid point? You think he's scorned? I think he is a valid point. The numbers say valid point. According to the NBA's player tracking data, opponents shot 57.4% at the rim when guarded by Kevin Love last season. That ranked dead last among 51 players who defended at least 6 shots at the rim per game. I know. Why would we ever be talking about defense from Mr. Top 5 player?
No, I'm just talking about the things that he's not. Whatever.
Okay. I thought you had to play both ends, right?
I see how it is.
Thought you had to play both ends.
He's not perfect. He's not perfect.
Mike, there's a difference between not perfect and abysmal. Go ahead. Continue.
The number in the news for Logan Mankins is 6. The 6-time Pro Bowl guard who has started all 16 games in 6 of his 9 seasons since the Patriots took him with the last pick of the first round of the 05 draft. He was sent to Tampa Bay in exchange for tight end Tim Wright in a 2015 4th-round pick. Now, Bill Belichick decided the 32-year-old Mankins wasn't worth the $6.25 million in cash he was due this year and the $7 million next year. And the move also creates $5.755 million in cap space for the Patriots in 2014. In saying goodbye to Bill Belichick, to Mankins, this is what Belichick said. He said he is everything we'd ever want in a football player and one of the all-time great Patriots and the best guard I ever coached. Awesome. Okay, best coach in football, whatever you say. As far as I'm concerned, this man is above questioning. Whatever Bill Belichick says.
So, since you used the breakup analogy a few minutes ago with Kevin Love, so is this the equivalent of it's not you, it's me? Is that what he just told us? Well, in this case, it is Bill Belichick. And look, I understand that he's used this blueprint before. We saw it with Lawyer Malloy. We saw it with Richard Seymour. We've seen it with other Patriots. They don't get attached. They've made that very clear. However, if these last few years are supposed to be about maximizing Tom Brady's this twilight of his career where he's still an elite level quarterback, what sense does it make to get rid of a player that his teammates still call the best offensive lineman on the team? How does that help, Mike?
Well, that's why they're not running the team, are they? And the fact that they're in the conversation for contenders year in and year out, the fact that they're at the end, as they like to say, at least competing for AFC championships, if not Super Bowls, year in and year out. That's why I'm not going to question Bill Belichick.
I noticed you said competing, not winning.
Well, guess what? That goes for 30 other teams, too,
but maybe
that didn't win it.
the reason they're not closing the deal is because they do stuff like this.
Okay, so let me ask you something. Do you think Bill Belichick would ever willingly do something to make the team worse? Do you think that's
I don't think he would try to make the team worse. Okay. However, I do think that he can sometimes be guilty, as strange as this may sound, as too much long-term thinking.
That's not, but I think he's still trying to help the team in the short term because Tim Wright, while he might not be a household name, you're talking about a guy who caught 73% of his targets last season. That was 5th highest among tight ends, having had a minimum 50 targets last year. What do they love to do more than anything? Run a 2 tight end set. Gronk has been unreliable based on his health. We know where Aaron Hernandez is. So this is helping Tom Brady. They know, the offensive linemen, nobody knows who they are. But over the years, and I know Dante Scarnecchia isn't there anymore, but over the years, they have made a living from having no-name offensive linemen, opening up holes for that running game, and protecting Tom Brady, who tends to make his offensive linemen and receivers look better. I learned my lesson in 2003, my one and only year as the lead beat writer for the Boston Globe of the New England Patriots. Before the season, they cut Lawyer Malloy. Everybody was shocked, hurt, upset. They lost 31-0 at Buffalo to open the season. They lost to Philadelphia at Philly the next game, 0-2. Everybody's talking about Bill Belichick's lost the team. They went on to win the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years, and they win it again the next year. He's not batting 1,000, but his batting average is so high until if he says that 32-year-old Logan Mankins is no longer worth his salary and we can get better by moving him, I believe it.
Well, here's the thing. And this is no disrespect to Tim Wright, but is he as good of a tight end as Logan Mankins is an offensive lineman?
That might not be what he's thinking. Belichick's thinking may be, hey, he's a better tight end than we could find. I think they went through some 10 tight ends recently. He's a better tight end than anybody we have. And the production or the play that I can get from the guards or the linemen replacing Logan Mankins offset that loss. So if he feels like they can still be good at the offensive line and now be better at tight end while getting rid of an aging, perhaps underperforming guard, who's to argue?
A guard ranked the 18th out of all guards? Okay.
That's Pro Football Focus.
Yes.
What does Bill Belichick say?
All right.
His ratings might be different.
Clearly they are.
You saw the ratings of the head coaches on ESPN.com from insiders?
I did.
Who's number one?
I'm guessing Bill Belichick.
Well, you have to guess, you know.
I know it's Bill Belichick.
Patriots trade Pro Bowl guard Logan Mankins. Is Bill Belichick above being questioned? The numbers say yes. Belichick is just trying to get the Patriots offense back to where it thrived in two tight end sets. From 2010 to 2012, New England ran the most two tight end plays in the NFL and also ranked first in yards per play in those sets. But last year they ran two tight ends about half as often as in the previous 3 years and ranked just 23rd in yards per play. Deion Branch, Richard Seymour, Lawyer Malloy, Randy Moss, Wes Welker.
But
who am I
you guys
missing?
act like
Who am I
they didn't
missing?
miss those
the
guys.
But the beat somehow always goes on. They always win a division and they're always deep in the playoffs. How is that?
And then they run against more talent, and then you realize what they don't have. Okay.
It's still me? You
Still
done?
you? I'm done.
The number of the news for Josh Shaw is 2. The story of how USC defensive back Josh Shaw suffered 2 high ankle sprains is in doubt. Shaw told the school he jumped from the second story of an apartment complex to save his 7-year-old nephew who was struggling in the pool. USC head coach Steve Sarkisian said Tuesday the school has received several calls questioning the validity of Shaw's story, but for now Sark seems to be sticking by his senior captain. Now let's stay with that word vet for a second. Should USC have vetted Josh Shaw's story more thoroughly in the first place?
They should have. And ESPN's Arash Markazi, who we know pretty well, works for ESPNLA.com, he tweeted something which I think is what pretty much sent this into a snowball effect. Apparently, according to Arash, USC had some questions about this story before they put it out there, because that's what people have to realize. This wasn't a case where the media found out about the story and we ran it with it. This was an instance where USC learned of the story. They put out a press release. They put out statements, and they furthered this story themselves.
So they were already questioning it before they put out the statement?
Put out some of the statements. They just everything.
Before they released the story, they were already questioning.
They were already had some questions, which to me, if you have some questions, even if they're just small, niggling, gotta dot the I's, cross the T's, just want to make sure everything adds up, all you have to do is put out a statement and say, hey, he's injured, he's recovering, and just leave it at that. But they provided the door, and the media's walked through it, and guess what? The story isn't going away. Look, we did the story, I think, briefly yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm sure we both hope that this story is true, because if it's not, despite all the good things that they say about Josh Shaw, this is going to be a real window into his character, and it's going to make him look ugly, and people are going to say ugly things about him, and for that matter, it's a reflection on his family as well. If he's not telling the truth, my advice to him would be, just tell the truth. Just tell the truth, because what you don't want to happen is some kind of gotcha moment, because the media is on this story now. Now everybody is fascinated. If there is a lie to uncover, why would he do it? They're not going to give up. You're better off just taking the lump now, telling the truth, and then this will all go away sooner rather than later. Well,
that's why I don't blame USC, because they put it out as quickly as possible for the same reason that we ate it up as quickly as possible, because we wanted to believe it. And why would Josh Shaw, a senior captain whose character seems to be pretty high, why would he go to these lengths to lie? It's one thing to say, oh, I tripped, but to make it a heroic story when that's not the case, no, why would anybody do that? And I know we live in a cynical society, especially in our industry, and we're supposed to question everything, especially in light of the Manti Te'o story from a couple of years ago. But we wanted to believe this. And if he's lying about this does a disservice. The first person that came to mind when I heard this story was Joe Delaney. A lot of our younger viewers may not be familiar with that name. He was a Kansas City Chiefs running back, dove into a lake to save a child, couldn't swim, drowned. This was back in the early 80s. Read up on him. Courageous act. So when I heard this, I thought about him, and I was like, man, this is such a great story, because we want to hear and believe great stories. Because while we're cynical, we still have a soft spot for these types of stories. So I don't blame USC for running with it and putting it out there. If it's not true, I blame the guy who made the story up to begin with.
Yeah, ultimately, he faces the most blame.
And I know that sounds crazy coming from a journalist. We're supposed to vet things.
We are.
But I'm sorry, sometimes it's like, it's too good to be true, but you want it to be true because it's so good.
If they just had any doubts, all I'm saying is that maybe they should have just pursued and tried to answer whatever little niggly questions they had.
In hindsight.
But
I don't blame them for saying, wow, this is our captain, this is unbelievable. Look, he's not going to be available, and here's why. I wanted to believe it too, and I'm still holding out hope that it is true.
Yeah, me too. All right, moving on to some more football, pro kind though. The number in the news for the Cowboys is $18,300 to $25,200. That will be the price range for the Dallas Cowboys themed watches made by Hublot, a Swiss watchmaker.
Hold on.
What?
Isn't it Hublot?
I don't know. I don't have watches that expensive, so I have no Hublot, whatever.
New watch alert.
Okay.
Hublot.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not hip that way. Anywho, so
I'm sorry.
I'm glad you corrected me. I'll now say Hublot.
Listen, man, the streets is watching.
All right, I didn't know. Sorry. I don't even own a watch. Anyway, so Jerry Jones, he announces his partnership in his $1 billion stadium.
Yep.
And while announcing it, he has this to say, talking about the Cowboys, we're the glitz and glamour of the NFL. We want to kick our opponents, you know what, with glitz and glamour.
Now, mind you, that's out of my price range too.
Okay, because you said that like you owned a couple.
No, that's just from what's the song, the Jay-Z and Kanye? I forgot. They reference it. The kids reference it in the rap songs that the
Sorry,
kids
I'm not that hip, America. I didn't know what that was.
Right.
All right. Nevertheless, considering he's saying...
So what's the question?
Your boy Jerry Jones is saying they win with glitz and glamour. Well, perhaps if that's the case, maybe the Cowboys jersey should be bedazzled. Perhaps Tony Romo should wear a fur collar. But this is further evidence why the Cowboys will not be a success with this dude. We win with glitz and glamour? Really?
What's wrong with that?
Defend him. Defend him, Mike. I dare you.
No, I don't know. The defense can rest. This is about the prosecution. What's so wrong with that? What's so wrong with win with style? What's wrong with that? What did Deron say? You look good, you feel good, you play good, they pay you good.
But the problem is they don't play good, okay? This is the team of if looking good to them is 8-8, well they look kind of raggedy, don't you think? They got their defense has given up the 5th most points since 2010. Glitz and glamour, are you sure?
But we got to separate Jerry the salesman and Jerry the owner and Jerry the Hollywood Jerry from Jerry the general manager and Jerry the one that I think he sincerely wants to win. Now, does he want to win bad enough to get out of his own way? That is the eternal question. But I think he wants to win. I don't think you can question his commitment to winning.
No, I don't.
Given the money that he's able to pay. Now, does he pay the right people? That remains to be seen, and more often than not, he has not. But I think the ultimate test of what was important to Jerry Jones occurred in the draft room when he wanted to draft Johnny Manziel, and apparently his son Steven stopped him.
But he still wanted it because he wanted glitz and glamour.
Well, I mean, a lot of people probably thought about drafting Johnny Manziel. I thought it would have been a smart football pick because Tony Romo isn't getting any younger. But because he went Zach Martin and went offensive line, went for substance over style, I think that spoke volumes about it. I think Jerry sincerely wants to win. Does he want to win well enough to cede authority? No. And maybe he's always going to be the problem. But him putting off a Hublot or whatever it is.
That's what I call it. I don't know. Only watch I know is Rolex. That's all I know. And I don't own one of those either. So sorry. I don't know what's hot in these streets.
Well, me neither. I mean, I use phones anyway to tell time.
Exactly.
I need a watch. I need a nice watch anyway.
Look.
You think if we did a podcast about designer watches, we'd get free watches?
There's an idea. Are Jerry Jones's comments further evidence?
It's Hublot? It is?
It's Hublot. So I was right?
No, Jeremy, be quiet. You're confusing me.
Are Jerry Jones's comments further evidence the Cowboys will never be great again? You say no, I say yes. The numbers say yes. It's another example of Jerry being completely out of touch because there definitely hasn't been anything glamorous about the way Dallas has played defense in recent years.
You just put this in here to mess with me.
Over the past 4 seasons, the Cowboys have allowed opponents to score on 37% of drives, the highest rate in the NFL. Real glamorous, getting your butt kicked all the time, right? Okay.
Just move on.
Look, Mike, since Jordan is your boy, tell him I'm going to need a hookup on some of those Roger Federers.
It's sweet, right?
Right.
That's what you call game recognizing game. It's time for some numbers you need to know. The number you need to know for Josh Gordon is 53. Sources anticipate the NFL will announce its Josh Gordon ruling today, 53 days after Gordon was arrested July 5th in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Or 11 days before the Browns season opens.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Surprised it took this long? The Browns apparently are annoyed by that.
Yeah, I am surprised that it's taken this long because if you're a team and knowing you're about to lose arguably your best offensive weapon, I'll just say it, I'm sure they've been making contingency plans, but it just seems to lead to some unnecessary awkwardness of him playing in preseason, not really looking like he's into it. They should have had a decision by now.
You would think so. I still, listen, given the particulars of the failed test, the A sample, B sample, how arbitrary that is, and how minimally he failed a test based on the threshold for marijuana, it just feels like he should get a reduced suspension. It's always going to be compared to Ray Rice, but we digress.
The number you need to know for the Seahawks is 300,000. The Seahawks, along with Pete Carroll, have been fined more than $300,000 and will lose 2 minicamp practices in 2015 for violating non-contact rules that govern NFL teams' off-season practices. So,
you think they care?
No, they got an excessive fine for excessive contact.
You thought that was a heavy fine?
No, well, it just seems like a lot. Well, to channel AI, we're talking about practice here. And I understand that because of player safety, there's different rules put on practice now.
But given they're the defending Super Bowl champions, do you think that they care about paying a few $100,000 if they're going to go back and repeat, if it's worth it? Obviously, they felt like it was worth it. And apparently, according to Pro Football Talk, the investigation started from Richard Sherman getting into a fight. So that's how they got busted, which further lets me know more teams are doing this. They just happen to get busted.
This is like the 20-hour rule in college football.
Precisely. Everybody's doing it. The number you need to know for Michael Sam is 75. The rookie DN remains on the Rams roster after the team made the cut to 75 players Tuesday afternoon. Rams must trim their roster to 53 players by Saturday at 4 Eastern. I expect them to make the final cut. I think it's going to be hard for them to let him go. However, if they do, a good player at another position of need just won out. More important than making the team, though, is Michael Sam has made an impression this preseason. He has proved to the rest of the league that he can play, and maybe he should have gone earlier than the 7th round.
And I like what Jeff Fisher had to say, because a lot of people, given the depth they have on the defensive line, were thinking that he needed to make himself valuable on special teams. And Jeff Fisher said, no, we're looking at him purely as a defensive specialist. And so far right now, he very much looks the part of the SEC co-defensive player of the year.
Yep, he has held it down.
The number you need to know for Adrian Peterson is 18,355. Peterson told the Star Tribune that he will break Emmitt Smith's rushing record of that amount of yards, and went on to say that he wants to be the best to ever play the game of football. Is that realistic?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. I mean, Jerry Rice has got that title right now, regardless of position, maybe the best player of all time. Some say Jim Brown. Mm-hmm. But if he rushes for 20,000 yards, and I don't put anything past this man, I really don't. I know we've done a whiteboard about this.
Yes,
with
we have.
Say when you hit 29 as a running back, he seems to defy all conventional wisdom. So I wouldn't put anything past him.
He certainly seems like somebody more than capable of bucking the trend that we've seen, as you said, with running backs. However, I do wonder if he doesn't attain more postseason success.
Well, there you go.
How that might have people look at him.
Get that title too, the Elways, the Montanas. The number you need to know for Jason Garrett is 30. 30 league insiders, I referenced this earlier, they were polled in order to rank the 32 NFL head coaches. One of the most surprising results was Cowboys coach Jason Garrett coming in at number 30. That's messed up.
But I think it's mostly accurate. Look, you
mostly
look at
accurate.
Mostly accurate.
I think it's mostly accurate.
All right,
it's either accurate or it's not.
Okay, fine. Fine, it's accurate.
Accurate is not. Which one is it?
I just wouldn't know exactly what number I'd put on him, but I would feel very comfortable saying that he is one of the worst coaches in the NFL. Look, Jerry Jones has tried to stick with this experiment long enough.
Is it a Garrett problem or a Jerry Jones problem, though?
It's both, because Jason Garrett was learning on the job a lot, and I understood that. But fact of the matter is, Wade Phillips took him to the playoffs.
Why didn't they put him at 16?
Still waiting.
Why didn't they put him at 16?
For what?
8-8.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
All right, we welcome in former NFL general manager, ESPN NFL insider, Mark Dominic. Mark, we were talking about, the new watch alert, Hublot. We asked you what kind of watch you have. You got a Rolex. You got two of those.
See, I know that one.
No, I have one.
You have one of those.
It's just one. No, you can't have two. If you have two, you got probably one too many is what I look at that.
See, I'm still working on the first one.
Yes,
but I know that brand name. I got it, everybody. Stop tweeting me. Hublot, I got it. Anyway, we're here to talk a little bit of football with you. Much like everybody else has heard and knows is official by now, the Patriots traded Logan Mankins to the Tampa Bay Bucks for a 4th-round pick, tight end Tim Wright. Belichick is known for making these moves before Richard Seymour, Lawyer Malloy, but as good of a coach as he is he above being questioned, even though this has been successful for them in the past?
No, I don't think he's above being questioned. I mean, I think the thing with Bill Belichick is, he's had serious success in terms of making good decisions with his trades and when to make them, when not to. I mean, you can look at, like you said, Richard Seymour, Deion Branch. There's a lot of them. Randy Moss. He knew when to hold him and when to let him go. And he's a disciple to me of what I used to read when I read Bill Walsh's books.
Correct.
You got to let him go 1 year too soon rather than 1 year too late. And that's a hard part of the National Football League. That's the business side of the game. But I think that's what he was looking at here with Logan Mankins, and it certainly fit up with what the Bucs need at the guard position. It's a hefty price in terms of financially for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, you take on a $6 million guard, you're saying we're good on offense, we're going to win this year when you take a 32-year-old guard at $6 million. At the same point, a fourth-round pick's good value for an older player that, reportedly may have been asked to take a pay cut.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Jason Light, your successor in Tampa, worked under Bill Belichick, so he's got that same school of thought from New England. But this is why Bill Belichick is the perfect person to run a business, because he can sit up there and say Logan Mankins is an all-time great Patriots, one of the best player I ever coached, or best guards I ever coached, everything you want in a football player, and still send him out the door because sentiment doesn't get involved. He's so cold and calculating and emotionless until it's exactly what you want, and that's why he's able to let a guy go sooner rather than later. And all he's doing it for, I sound like a Belichick cheerleader, but I'm sorry, I've just seen it work too many times. He's trying to make the team better. We may not understand it in the present, but if they're there at the end of the season and Tom Brady is lighting it up to Tim Wright and Rob Gronkowski, who's going to miss Logan Mankins? The beat constantly goes on in New England, Jamel.
Yeah, they're always competing for something significant, be it an AFC title or a Super Bowl, obviously. And I get that. And I know it's worked before, but it depends on your definition of work. Okay, the end result, I've seen the Patriots, even when they've had successful seasons, they will run up against this team that has just a little bit more talent. They miss Richard Seymour. They did miss him, okay?
Did they?
Yes, they did miss him.
Maybe my memory's fading.
I think we have a tendency, because they finish every year 12-4, 14-2. They have a great record, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But when you get to the point where you're trying to compete for the final prize, sometimes it's that little decision that you made way back then that might be the reason why you didn't make it.
Or maybe you just didn't play in that game very well.
Or it could be the simple fact.
Or maybe you ran up into a better team. It's possible.
You got an elite quarterback in Tom Brady, right? You're supposed to be maximizing the rest of his years. How can you do that when you are trading away his best offensive lineman?
Did you draft him right?
Which one? Tim Wright. We signed him as an undrafted free agent.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got him out of college. So he came out of Rutgers, and he was a wide receiver. And so obviously Greg Schiano, our coach at the time, knew him very well. He's an awesome young man. He's a great worker. His deal was we brought him into the camp and thought if we could put some weight on him and turn him into a tight end, that has a possibility. So we tried to put some weight on him through the offseason, the little bit of offseason program we had. Tim came in and actually really understood the position well and really grew in it. And I think that's what the Patriots looked at him when they signed him, is they sat there and said, we don't have Aaron Hernandez. He's not Aaron Hernandez. But they need a pass catcher to go along with Gronk, the combination. And that's why I think he made a lot of sense to this trade in terms of it helped an area that's obviously very important to New England's offense, the tight end position. But again, they got Marcus Cannon, they've got some young clients, they got some young guys that can step into the guard position that have played in the National Football League. So I think they saw it from a different way of we can save some money, we've got to build for the future. There's guys we're going to want to sign back long term here. Let's save the money here. Let's gain a pick. It's a decent pick. I mean, fourth-round picks to me as a general manager still had good value. When we went in the 5th and 6th and 7th, those are more play-in chips. Right. But fourth-rounders in this league, there's a lot of starters in that range.
I know one time this season, I don't want to hear that Brady's not being protected well. I don't want to hear that all season.
We'll leave this conversation. Now let's move on to another Patriot, ex-Patriot, who they didn't miss. Brandon Merriweather, his 2-game suspension, which he will appeal for what the league deemed to be an illegal hit against Baltimore's Torrey Smith, who, for what it's worth, Smith tweeted that Merriweather should not have been suspended. Check out what Merriweather's teammate and NFL PA rep Ryan Clark had to say. Now, Clark was referring to former player and NFL VP of Football Ops Troy Vincent, about whom Clark also said, quote, you get a guy who played ball, even though I think Troy Vincent played it softly. Ooh. He didn't play as aggressive and violent as Brandon. Maybe that's part of it, not having that mindset, close quote. Bottom line, Mark, is Brandon Merriweather being targeted, and if so, unfairly targeted because of his reputation?
He has a reputation. Once you get in that program as a hitter, as a physical hitter.
He's on the at-risk list.
There's no doubt. I had one in Tampa with Deshaun Goldson. He is in that list. And once you're in it, it is very hard to get out of it. So Troy Vincent was in a tough spot. Look, he's new to the position, but he got put in a spot where, look, the guy's a repeat offender. You see the hit, and really, he doesn't launch. I mean, the argument's there for the Washington Redskins to make a point that says, let's lower the suspension. But the problem is he's a repeat offender. And repeat offenders have to continue to go through the process, and as they continue to get exercised, the offense or the punishment becomes bigger. But he didn't launch. He tried to lower his head. So there's a lot of things you'd sit there and say, this isn't a typical Brandon Merriweather hit. We've been suspended. But I think Troy Vincent was put in a spot where, look, the guy, like Ryan Clark said, it's 6 offenses. 6 offenses is going to have something come down for the commissioner's office.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, obviously, and Brandon has had some comments in the past talking about how he's just going to start going for guys' knees. So I think it's not just the hits, it's also the rhetoric that he's put behind some of these plays. But like you, if this were another player in another uniform, I probably would have looked at this hit a little bit differently. But because it's him, you wonder about the intent. And so I'm fine with him appealing it, because just on the face value of what you see, you understand that there's a little bit, it's borderline, it's a little bit of a gray area.
History.
Exactly.
Well, but how much should history factor into the present? And by that I mean, if it's a legal hit, if you got, and I know again, like Torrey Smith said, he's not the one doling out the discipline. It's not his job. But if you got him, and Torrey was actually responding to Plaxico Burress, you got 2 receivers saying that's not a dirty hit. What does the fact that he's a previous offender, repeat offender, have to do with that hit in that moment? That's why I understand where both Ryan Clark and Merriweather and the team is coming from, because it's like, okay, we got his reputation. You punished him for that. You can't keep punishing for stuff he did in the past.
And I agree, Michael, that's the thing I think that still needs to be addressed at the league office a little bit, is the fact that is every year a new year. Because you have paid your punishment, like you're saying. And so now it's like being a repeat of a crime. You've had a DUI, you've had another DUI.
Right. Now you don't get the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
What's that?
You don't get the benefit of the doubt.
No, you don't. And then that's where I think the league office has to start looking at it and saying, how do we get these guys out of this program? Because there's other players that have been suspended. I kept track of this last year. It was like 8 or 9 players that have had multiple suspensions or multiple hits that are heading this way. And there's some really big stars that are heading this way to suspensions when they just play the game at a physical rate. Yeah. And so Merriweather's in a different spot because of some of his egregious hits. I mean, he had some really nasty ones last year. This one is not. But the problem is he's stuck in a program that you can't get out of once you're in it.
I think Ryan Clark and Brandon Merriweather need to sit down with Troy Vincent, because that sounded a little bit like
there's some baggage there.
Troy had a pretty nice career now. Troy Vincent played a long time.
Yes. All right. You take care. You and that great watch of yours.
All right. This just in, and the number in the news for Josh Gordon is 1 as in 1 year. The wide receiver has been suspended for 1 year per league sources. We anticipated ruling today, and we just got it. It means that he will also miss all of next summer's training camp under the policy. So that's why the Browns and Gordon, his camp, according to our Adam Schefter, were very frustrated about the league dragging its feet on this. Do we have the statement from the NFLP on behalf of Josh Gordon? Let's put that on the screen if we got it. He says, I'd like to apologize to my teammates, coaches, the Cleveland Browns organization, and our fans. I'm very disappointed that the NFL and its hearing office didn't exercise better discretion and judgment in my case. I would like to sincerely thank the people who have been incredibly supportive of me during this challenging time, including my family, agent, my union legal team, Cleveland Browns staff. That second sentence in particular, very disappointed the NFL and its hearing office didn't exercise better discretion and judgment in my case. That's the key. When your reaction?
My reaction to this is not surprised, given what were some of the factors we started to hear about, what his, I guess, defense was of what happened, secondhand smoke. I knew that wasn't going to fly, because it begs the question of if that, even if that were the case.
It's never worked before.
It's never worked before, and quite honestly, there's going to be a lot of questions of your common sense for even being in that situation where you would be vulnerable to that to begin with.
Speaking of judgment, he did have the DUI.
He did.
Mentioned earlier, 53 days ago now.
Exactly. So this is, to me, potentially, if he uses his time correctly away from football, this could be the best thing that's ever happened to Josh Gordon. I told you this before. I understand needing the support system, the team being an outlet for him, maybe a way for him to get things back on track. But I also understand that there's a really fine line between enabling somebody and empowering them. Josh Gordon needs to be empowered. And he needs to understand that football is a privilege. It is not a right. And it's something that he's far too talented to be going through things like this. And especially since this has been a consistent problem with him throughout his career. There's a reason why he had a checkered history in college, a reason why he's had a checkered history here in the National Football League. I hope this is all it takes for him to truly get it.
I hope you're right, and I hope it's not the opposite, as in him being away from the structure and the support that he needs. And there's been some talk that the constant turnover within the Browns organization has not helped, because as soon as he trusts somebody, Jimmy Haslam ushers him out the door when he cleans house. So I hope he can clean up his act despite being basically on his own, because this is really less about football or, you know, the future of the Browns and the quarterbacks, and more about a talented young man who needs to get his life together. So hopefully this is the wake-up call you're talking about. But back to what we were talking about earlier about the NFL dragging its feet on this. As we talked about earlier in today's show, they're 11 days away from their opener against Pittsburgh. They were using him in the preseason. If you were going to suspend him for a year and say your secondhand smoke and the low threshold for a positive test and your A/B sample argument is not going to fly, they should have done this a long time ago. Now we got an NFL spokesman saying that his reinstatement will be determined after his suspension. So now you're talking about this going into next summer's training camp. This was just unfair to the Browns to drag it on this long, and I do understand their frustration. But I do understand the need for him to get it once and for all. I thought he would have got it anyway. And look, maybe it wasn't secondhand smoke. Maybe he's trying to, you know, stuff a banana in everybody's collective tailpipe. Maybe this is not. Maybe he actually inhaled, and the DWI was just a continuation of the pattern that you spoke of. Either way, I hope he gets it together. I wanted to see them at least give him 8 games, because maybe this is unfair to the league. But it is what it is at this point, and it's what Roger Goodell asked for. Ray Rice got 2 games.
Yeah.
My man's getting a year. Doesn't seem right.
Right.
Doesn't seem right. You know, you got Brandon Merriweather getting two games for hitting somebody. He's getting 2 games, for whatever. Getting a year for whatever he did. It just seems like the punishment, does it truly fit the crime, especially given where this country is going as it relates to this particular issue?
Well, that will be the next conversation that the NFL has to have, which is as more states decide to legalize marijuana. Right now, I think the latest Gallup poll that showed something almost close to 60% of Americans, they want marijuana to be legalized. As the country moves into a different thought process with this particular drug, I think the NFL will have to address it. And there's been at
least the threshold,
yes,
which is way lower than what the International Olympic Committee's threshold.
It is.
WADA.
Yes, it is. And I think they'll just in general have to address whether or not marijuana, just as a pain management method, fits into how players are medicating themselves. Because many have said before on the record that they would much rather do this as opposed to taking a painkiller and risking addiction that way, or maybe doing some damage to their bodies internally over prolonged use. So I know right now Roger Goodell has been, he's sort of stuck to status quo with it, but the time is coming very soon where he's going to have to address this from a policy standpoint.
To your point, NFL Nation on ESPN.com surveyed 82 players, 75% of which said that they consider marijuana to be less dangerous than alcohol.
Yeah, and look, again, as you said, when we look at the specter of all these crimes, certainly Roger Goodell, who's already been under a lot of criticism for how it seems to be, this guy gets this and this guy get this. As much as some people may not like Josh Gordon getting a year, I think it's about being a repeat offender, yes, and I also think it's about the fact that he's in the program. So
correct.
Once you're in and you abide by and you know what the rules,
a collectively bargain program, which is not the same as Roger Goodell being judge, jury, and
arbitrarily.
This is the Players Association as well. So if they open up this CBA or next negotiations, they got to collectively bargain a different policy, one that's more reflective of the changing times. But like we said, just to wrap this up, ultimately, this is on Josh Gordon and his decision-making, because he's getting a year because he is a repeat offender under the terms of a collectively bargained policy. We may not like it, but those are the rules.
Those are the rules.
Woo, this hour has flown by. Time for some numbers you need to know.
The number you need to know for Clint Trickett is 4. The West Virginia starting quarterback said that Nick Saban's daughter was his first kiss 4 days before they play the second-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide.
Boy, I would unleash the hounds if I were Nick Saban.
Well, when the hounds should have also been unleashed on him when he tweeted in July he was watching football with girls. He said watching football with girls is literally worse than death. One bad play, they suck. # stick to cooking.
Yep.
Nick Saban's daughter made a really good decision on that one.
That's exactly right. I'm telling you, it'd be zone blitz. I would embarrass him if I were Nick Saban. I would unleash my entire defensive playbook. I got an 8-year-old daughter, man, making me mad. The number you need to know for Kobe Bryant is 0 for 30. Gotham Chopra great name,
Yes.
the director of the upcoming documentary on Kobe Bryant, he told SI's Chris Ballard that Kobe said while watching a Nets Heat game when Deron Williams went 0 for 9, that Kobe would rather go 0 for 30 than 0 for 9. The most Kobe thing Kobe has ever said.
And if by most Kobe thing, you mean brilliant
Yes.
and awesome. That's exactly how I would describe this.
Kobe is a life coach.
He is.
That's why I like the Kobe system.
He is.
He can deal with failure. What he can't deal with is trying. And love him or hate him, whether you get frustrated with him or not, this is brilliant. This is motivational.
It is, and you know what? I like the fact that as he's gotten older, he's become more open.
Right.
We are getting a window into his
We
personality.
saw that when he was 18, shooting air balls. He didn't care.
All right, the
The number you need to know for Popeyes is 0. Despite the fact there isn't a Popeyes in the Bahamas, the fried chicken franchise is sponsoring the Bahamas Bowl, held on December 24th.
Best collabo since
You're coming with.
Tina Marie and Rick James.
Let me tell you something.
Bahamas and fried chicken, I'm in.
I'm still on a high about this. If you haven't, shameless plug.
Just, don't worry.
Exactly.
You helping them out.
If you have not heard our latest His and Hers podcast, download it. We rank the top 5 fried chicken places. And number 1 is, of course, Popeyes. And we're going to be there for that game. We're doing a show from there.
Here's a number for you, Mike. The number you need to know for Drew Brees is 4. Brees and his wife welcomed their 4th child and first baby girl Monday night. And Brees joked that he's going to have a vasectomy during the Masters so he can sit around and watch it. You got how many kids?
3.
All right.
What?
I'm just saying.
Let me tell you something. There are 2 surgeries that I will never have. One is LASIK, and the other one's a vasectomy.
Like that?
It's just a policy. It's just a policy. Not doing it.
So the shop is still open, huh?
It's closed because the wife decided to close it.
You can help her